I have spent 3 days researching this video. I've got all the evidence. I've pieced it all together. Avengers Endgame. I know 2 critical pieces of information from all the information that you see here. It's going to be a film, and it's coming out in roughly 5 weeks.
But he didn't say anything!
To hell with the whole crazy hermit gimmick. I live that gimmick daily, so let's just stop pretending. Welcome, my name's Lorne, I'm your host for this episode of the Halcyon Show, and I thought it would be fun, given that Avengers Endgame, the pinnacle of Marvel storytelling for the last 10 years, the crown jewel in a cascade of storytelling is upon us. So what would be fun? Before I lost my trail of thought there, well, I thought it would be fun to go back and revisit Avengers Infinity War and re-review the trailer and see what we can try and make out from the subtle nuances that we might have missed originally, how they might tie into the new film, and how everything carries forward.
Well, we're waiting.
And what's really important in this video is that I want to hear from you. I want to hear your theories. I want to hear what you want to see. I want to hear what you want to see going forward. I want to hear what you want to see from the film as a whole, what you think are missed opportunities, what you think the developers and the producers could have done better, and who you want to see take the lead going forward in the new phase of Marvel films.
Spider-Man! Spider-Man!
So, start at the beginning. Let's go back to the plot threads of Avengers Infinity War. So the big one, the kind of reason why we're all here. So Thanos and his quest to collect the Infinity Stones to eradicate 50% of all living things. Spoiler alert, he done it! So the big thing throughout the whole film is that it's just this immense struggle to try and stop Thanos from obtaining the ability to be able to destroy half of the living things of the planet. He succeeds, albeit not without a cost. Clearly the gauntlet has taken some... Clearly the gauntlet has taken some pretty heavy-duty damage as a result, because nothing is really built to contend with the annihilation of 50% of all trillions of lives gone in an instant, albeit not an instant, it was more like a slowly paced knife stab to the gut. How is this gonna pay off? I've seen theories of people that want to believe that they're not dead, they've been transported to another realm, possibly the quantum realm, possibly somewhere housed within the Soul Stone because of its so-called wisdom. From my perspective, I think that would be somewhat of a disappointment, because if you do have it that they don't die, they just get transported somewhere else, then really a lot of the sting of that last 5 minutes or so is taken out completely. And something you have to acknowledge about these films, and I think Lucas, for all his foibles with Star Wars, had this right when he was doing the Star Wars trilogy, albeit the first one I don't think he fully realised he was going to get the chance to do a trilogy. But anyway, point being, the rewatchability. How does it make you feel watching it back, even knowing what you know now? Can you still feel those emotions? Do you still go through the motions? Maybe it makes it worse because now you know what's coming and you don't want it to happen. Something you wish you could stop. That's something that's really cool to see in films that do it right. And I think that that aspect would be spoiled if it just turns out, well, no, we were just chilling out somewhere. Even if it's horrific and, oh no, it was terrible, this parallel dimension, it was like hell on earth. You didn't die though. So I think the deaths are important to the story, because then it depends on how they're revived and how they bring them to the fold going forward, so it doesn't feel cheap, but at the same time that you're happy to see them, because of course, you know, part of the last 5 minutes was just seeing your favorite characters plucked from existence one after another.
Thanos did exactly what he said he was going to do. He wiped out 50% of all living creatures.
Damn!
A subtle one that seems to have been overlooked because of the emphasis placed on the new gen or the characters that were going to be axed off at the end of the film is Tony Stark and his quest that he's gone through since the events of the first Avengers. I know you could probably tie it into when he first became Iron Man, I suppose, but for me it began when he went through, because he references it so often afterwards, his hallucination at the beginning of Avengers Age of Ultron. You know, the Chitauri play a massive part. He's the only one alive left amongst all of his dead combatants. They're asking, why, Tony? You could have saved us. It's been plaguing him since the end point of the first film to now, to the point where even when Thanos and him have his confrontation, he's surprised that Thanos knows who he is, and Thanos being quote unquote burdened with knowledge. Do they have a link? Did they experience something similar? Is that why Thanos set on his path originally, because he was given some kind of vision or some kind of impetus to do what he did that wasn't self-motivated, much in the same way that Tony Stark does? Is that, we're probably getting ahead of ourselves here, but is that what motivates his past self to maybe want to make amends and take a different path than his current self does?
You're missing the point. There's no throne. There is no version of this where you come out on top. Maybe your army comes, and maybe it's too much for us, but it's all on you. Because if we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn well sure we'll avenge it.
But we'll get onto that theory in a little while. But that's an interesting plot thread that I think is going to be resolved at some stage, because I think, of course, Tony Stark and Captain America are going to take center stage in this film. I think it's an inevitability. The only reason why Tony Stark doesn't feature as prominently in the trailers, I feel, and didn't feature in the Infinity War as much as people perhaps might have assumed, is because the emphasis will be placed on him as part of his farewell in the next film. I also think that the link between him and Thanos needs to be expanded upon a little bit, because otherwise it's kind of a big letdown, the fact that he knows who Tony Stark, he doesn't know anybody else. He doesn't know Doctor Strange, he doesn't know who, I don't know if he knows who Thor is, to be honest. He might do obviously through Loki, but not through reputation. He doesn't know who the Hulk is, he doesn't know who Black Widow or Hawkeye or anybody really, but Tony Stark he seems to know for some reason. So, another plot thread we need to talk about, Steve Rogers and his continued pursuit of conflict. Again, reference at the end of Age of Ultron, I think, where he looks at the base of the army and realizes that he's at home in the midst of battle. It really depends on how they want to sign off either character, because I truly believe that they won't kill off both Captain America and Iron Man. I think they'll keep at least one alive to be the one that they can call upon if they ever need to give the rub to another generation of Marvel characters. Rub in wrestling nomenclature is that you by association you seem more important. So if I stand next to someone who's more important than me, hopefully that association makes me look more important by comparison, as opposed to if I'd have stood here, said the exact same thing, done the exact same things on my own, versus someone walking in and saying, hey, I like what this guy's doing. It's the same thing, and with either one of those first generation and the first generation faces of the franchise, it's easier to then give someone else a push if they ever need to do that. But I think for my money, I think it'll be Steve Rogers that bites the bullet, mainly because I think it would be more poignant. I think him sacrificing himself to save everyone would mean more in the story. I also think that there's more money in Iron Man merch because of all the different suits and his usefulness in terms of turning up and just inventing something that the new generation could need. There's nothing that says these guys can't make cameos going forward, but I think the value built in to Iron Man surpasses that of the value built into Captain America, because Bucky can just become Captain America.
Hey, I doubt it.
Okay.
I think if you give anyone else the mantle of Iron Man, fine, but Tony Stark really is, it's the opposite really of Bruce Wayne and Batman. Batman's the draw in that. If you made a comic book about Bruce Wayne, I'm not sure anyone would care that much. They might be a little bit interested, but they wouldn't care that much. Whereas with Iron Man and Tony Stark, I think if you made just an adventure with Iron Man, it would be interesting, but I think Tony Stark is he's the draw in that situation. So I think, yeah, how that's going to be resolved? Probably sacrificing himself for the good of the universe. Scarlet Witch and Vision's relationship. Wank! Yeah, how's that going to be resolved? Because they're both dead in this one, that means they're probably both coming back. It touches on another aspect that I want to touch on later as far as the Infinity Stone is concerned, how that gets resolved. But yeah, as far as Vision and Scarlet Witch, they have a relationship in the comics, so it only makes sense for them to continue it in some form or fashion going forward, because then you've got a relationship in the group that could cause tension, drama, if whatever. I just thought it was handled rather clumsily by the films. They had 2 films to kind of build a relationship. The problem is with an ensemble cast, you're always going to struggle getting one person over, let alone a relationship. I wouldn't even say they've done it with Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. I know that we're supposed to be rooting for them, but I just don't see them together. I never found them all that convincing as a couple. I don't know why. They strike me as more of a, I don't know, best friends, not like loving each other. I don't know why. I think it's because they've just got too much chemistry in that sense, or maybe it's just me, I don't know. I've always thought that Captain America had the more believable romantic relationships. I don't know if it's because there was more deep meaning to them, but as far as Scarlet Witch and Vision, they just sort of jumped ahead in Infinity War. To touch on what happened in Captain America Civil War, there were the seeds of them because Vision was guarding her effectively, and they relate over their powers and they're feeling alien even amongst their peers. And then we jump to Infinity War and they're sharing a goddamn hotel room and spending romantic nights away together, even though in the previous film they were against each other. It just seems like a bit of a jump, and I'm not 100% sold on their relationship, but in the comics they are, and I don't know if they've signed on for more films. If they have, maybe they can give them more time to kind of expand on that relationship. It was kind of a bit like Black Widow and Hulk, just kind of, here you go, here's a relationship.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
Why? I don't understand why we need this, but apparently we did. That was an experiment that seems to have been dropped quite quickly, because they didn't reference it again. There was a moment in Infinity War between Banner and Romanoff where it's an awkward hello to each other after having not seen each other for a while, which is fine, you know, it's appreciated, but that's it. So I think we can pretty much, that relationship's dead and buried and not going to be touched on again. At least I don't think so. Moving on, Bruce Banner and the Hulk's conflict.
Where's your gun?
I don't know, we should have been having a thing.
There's no time for a thing. That's the thing right there. Let's go. Dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizards.
Sorry, I can't or he won't.
There's been talk that the last 3 films, Ragnarok, Infinity War, and then this one, Endgame, are part of a 3-film cycle for the Hulk that's going to come full circle in terms of his character and resolving it. I don't think he's back for future films, so it's going to be important to see how, because Hulk factors, he's nowhere in any of the trailers or any of the promotional footage, so you know he's got a pretty prominent role at some point in the film. They just don't want to let you know what it is and how it's going to be resolved, be it does Banner finally successfully cure himself? Does he separate himself from the Hulk entirely to let the Hulk be his own thing and Banner be his own thing? Maybe to pursue a relationship with Black Widow, who knows? Or do they amalgamate and become a more intelligent form of the Hulk going forward? Which I know happens in the comic books, at least on a couple of occasions, where the Hulk gains Banner's intelligence and they form a pseudo partnership of sorts, utilizing the best parts of both rather than to have to compromise to access the other's abilities. But I don't know how they would resolve that unless Hulk sacrificing himself, which I don't like the idea of. I don't like the idea that I keep having to come back to potentially people having to kill themselves to make this movie good, but we are faced with that prospect more and more when you think, well, how can they wrap everything up, because this character's not reappearing going forward? So do you have him have a happily ever after? If so, how do you do that when you spend 5 films ramming it down our throats? Hulk can't have a peaceful existence outside of conflict. He's there when he's needed, and same as Banner. Banner can't live a life of peace and serenity because there's always that risk there. So how do you reconcile that with telling us that he's going to have a happy ending unless he separates from the Hulk, him and Hulk become an amalgamation of the 2, or Hulk goes deady buys? One of the 2, so one of the 3 I should say. So and the final the final plot point of this film, which is kind of irrelevant at this point because it's played out and it won't factor into the next film at all, I don't think, is each Infinity Stone and how they're defended. So each Infinity Stone at the beginning of the film is being defended in some form or fashion apart from the Power Stone. Power Stone was destroyed off-screen. Xandar, I think it is the planet that it's housed in, but Thanos is, we're just told he obliterated the planet, took the stone, and that was that. And within the first few minutes, he has access to both the Power Stone and the Space Stone, the Tesseract. So from there, obviously, the stones fall one by one because no one can match the power, albeit we'll touch on something about that later on, which is a bit stupid. But anyway, the story of Infinity War is that of we are running out of time. This is our last attempt, last gasp to try and resolve the situation, bury old feuds and try and come together for the sake of the galaxy, the universe. And they ultimately fail, which for some reason people were shocked by. I don't know why people would be shocked by that, considering that it's called the Infinity War and there's going to be a sequel. I actually kind of like the fact now that they've not called them Part 1 and 2. I think that's an interesting move, considering that that's how they pitched it originally. I liked it originally, but I think the fact that they've called it Endgame, and that's referenced 2 or 3 times in the previous films, the fact that they say this right here, in fact, the one that stands out to me always is when, ironically enough, one of my previous points, Tony Stark is standing there saying, look, that right there, that up there, that's the end game. So he's talking about Avengers, the events of the Battle of New York. He's talking about his motivations going forward, and he refers to it as the end game. Doctor Strange reveals that part of his plans in the film is we're in the end game now. So either it's just something that they picked up on and they just went, we've said it a few times, it sounds cool, let's just call it Endgame. Or if this is a premeditated plot thread that's been there the whole time and no one just realized it was there, much in the same way that Bioshock had Songbird Scream in the first game, it's just no one knew what it was, so when you play it through again, you hear it and you go, hang on, that Songbird, they put that in they knew that was, wow. You know, it's one of those really intelligent things that they just said, look, no matter what happens, we're keeping this in the film so that it makes sense in the end. I love it. Right, so let's talk about some of the important moments in the film. So those are the plot threads, those are the things that you watch the film for. Those are the things that unravel as you go. So, important moments. Thanos defeats the Hulk and Thor, and it serves to introduce Thanos and highlights the difference between power between him and the 2 physically strongest Avengers. This point is probably going to be, again, not as relevant in this next film because Thanos is treated almost, not the hero of Infinity War, but it's his film. Thanos is the main character of that film and everyone else serves to support him in selling what an unstoppable force of nature this man is. His indomitable will, his absolute resolution in sacrificing everything that is required to achieve his goal. And at the end of the film, he achieves it. And the film almost allows you, the audience, the opportunity to sympathize with him to a certain degree because of the way the music is played when he's sitting there looking out at the universe that he's shaped irrevocably for the rest of time with a smile on his face. Not thinking about the hundreds of trillions of lives he's eradicated and changed for the worse in their mind, I imagine, but on the opportunity that he's afforded the universe in the wake of his actions, which is fantastic. But in this first scene, it just helps you. Thor has always been portrayed as being almost indestructible. He takes hits and he gets knocked down from time to time, but he's never really. I don't think he's ever been stabbed. I don't think he's bled maybe once or twice, but it's usually because he's depowered. It's the first time in any of the films that he's been made to look like a child, just utterly helpless, being grabbed by the goddamn head and burnt with the Power Stone. I mean, the fact that he can resist the full pelt of a Power Stone and then later on in the film, the sun, it shows how powerful Thor is, and Thanos is more powerful. So that gives you a really strong indicator of what Thanos is if you've not seen him in the comics before. Because again, I'll say this for the last time because this is the last time I'm getting the opportunity to say it. When I watched the original Avengers film, the one moment that stuck out for me was those credits when Thanos turned and smiled. No one else knew who the Thanos was. I go, oh, they're because it's Thanos. He's about as bad as it gets in the Marvel cinematic in the Marvel universe. There are worse, there are more powerful, and there are comic books Comic nerds out there, they're going to tell me that Thanos isn't a speck on the, he's not shit on the spectrum of power in terms of other people within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I'm just saying it's not as bad as DC, whereas DC there's gods and then there's people above gods and then there's people above the cosmic entities. Thanos is pretty definably one of the most powerful. He's immortal, but he's incredibly durable and resilient. So the fact that he's come this far now, where people associate power with Thanos, gives you that idea. And now he's a villain for the ages. He's one of the best villains ever because he was given a whole film to expound on his abilities, on his motivations, his character, and ultimately his flaws as an individual. Not just that he's all powerful and can't be stopped and there's nothing you can do. I've been defeated.
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look, it's just a flesh wound.
It's more questioning his resolve going forward and being almost terrified by the fact that even though you could argue that the big thing is, right, you want to click the universe to eradicate half the world, just double the size of the universe. Triple it, quadruple it, times it by 10, times it by 1,000,000. Any one of those things and you solve the problem in the same way.
Go on.
He goes, well, right, here's the problem. The clue's in the name. The universe's resources are finite. It's space finite, or whatever he says. What are the stones you're collecting called? I'll wait. That's right, Infinity Stones. Why couldn't you just go, there you go, infinite resources for everybody. Everybody's immortal, yay. No, half of you are dead. Bye-bye, I'm gonna go farm some shit now. Never mind. Anyway, we move on. Stark teams up with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man to battle Thanos, again to highlight the discrepancy in power between them. They've faced foes before that they've been able to battle toe-to-toe. Thanos is a whole new kettle of fish. He's overwhelmingly powerful, even against magic, even against technology, even against the height of human physical perfection. There's just no stopping him. And even with the combined might of it, it takes them all and they still struggle. They're probably on the losing side of getting that gauntlet off in that confrontation, if not for Star-Lord. But it's still interesting to see how powerful he is. Thor obtained Stormbreaker, which, looking back, I think you'll all agree, it makes Mjolnir look positively tame by comparison, because now he's using it as a prop to lean on when he's feeling tired, which he's not supposed to feel. He's supposed to have unlimited endurance.
I like this one.
But yeah, Stormbreaker, an excellent addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe for me, because you've seen its inception, you've seen how powerful it is, you've seen what it takes to wield, and now it seems it has a character of its own thanks to Groot and thanks to his interaction with the axe. It's a really nice little bit of storytelling from Marvel to include the audience in that process, because there were things that, like Peter Dinklage and the surprise cameo from him, for instance, and the fact that Thor got to demonstrate not only his strength but his resolve in building the axe. Absolutely magnificent, excellent. The Battle of Wakanda, Phantom Menace level of battle, not really significant. There's a couple of moments that I think are stupid, but you can't win them all. Thanos sacrifices Gamora to obtain the Soul Stone.